Geil will start with the Mystic Monastery and game number 3 here between him and Andersen underway. Chris with Llanowar Waste into a Warden in the first tree. One thing to note about the build of Abzan aggro that both Andersen and Boswell are playing this weekend, very painful mana base.
Yeah. Whether it's 4 mana confluences or pain lands, there's very few. They're much heavier on the pain land side than on the temple side of things.
They've got 4 Llanowar Waste, 3 Caves with Koilos. You throw in a couple fetch lands and those 4 copies of Mana Confluence. He's going to deal a lot of damage to himself. That's good and bad. I mean, your mana works, but certainly at a cost. Geil going to go down to 19 using that Flooded Strand, so Plains or an island on the way. Looks like he's going to get a basic island. We'll see what his turn 2 play will be. Again, Jace, Soulfire Grandmaster. There are some options here for Dan. Looks like it's going to be Jace.
All right, so the turn 2 Jace there on the play will be pretty helpful. It will, I'm curious how much of a control deck he is post-board here. So, talk about cards like Magma Spray, Lightning Strike, Valorous Stance in the main. He does get extra cards out of the sideboard, things like Glare of Heresy, Disdainful Stroke, even End Hostilities in his sideboard.
Chris bobbleheading right away to get Jace off the battlefield. The question, of course, when you are bobbleheading is, okay, do I want to save my bobblehead for Mantis Rider or something like that, which is really good at Xanzam? Do I save it for Jace? It looks like that question was answered very quickly. Get Jace off the battlefield.
Yeah, and it's interesting because Jace also, Jace being legendary means that you're possibly just unlocking another Jace in his hand by Bioblading there.
Here's a Temple for Chris. That's the white source of mana that he's currently missing. That top card's going to go to the bottom. See if he wants to Bioblight again, because he has another copy of that in his hand, but he also has a Dramoka's command.
Yeah, well, he can't use a command yet this turn.
Looks like he's going to attack and then Bioblight again. Okay.
And that makes sense. If the first one's good enough to Bioblight, it is likely the second one is too. Does not want Dan scoring card advantage off those.
Yeah, it's curious on, as you mentioned, if you're going to Bioblight the first one, you're probably going to Bioblight the second one. But, is it worth it to maybe pump that turn, let him have a Jace activation, then you've got a 3/3, then you command it with Bioblight at the ready? It's tough to say. I mean, there are some real decisions we made here because Chris could be punching through a lot more damage.
Yeah. Huge draw by Chris, though. Has a Siege Rhino for the turn. Now, the scary thing on his side is that Dan's holding up 4 mana here. And I don't know what kind of control package he's seen post-board, but even cards like Ojutai's Command could do some damage here.
Yeah, whenever you're playing against Jeskai nowadays, Ojutai's Command has risen so much in popularity that it really affects the way that you play the game. Chris this turn could slam down Siege Rhino and Dan could say, counter and get back my Jace, and all of a sudden...
Right, it's horrible for Chris.
Yeah, this game could be, I don't want to say over, but it changes a lot. And see, Chris has the opportunity to play Rashasha Death Dealer this turn, and he's choosing not to because of a card like Ojutai's Command.
Well played here by Chris, dodging that bullet. And he's actually left up Dramoka's Command mana, so once again he can keep Dan off this Jace.
A little bit of damage here. Dramoka's Command is going to take care of Jace. I have to imagine the ward's going to get a counter as well, and it will.
Well played.
Ojutai's Command is a card we're going to have to play around for some time.
But I really like Chris's sequencing there.
Yep, me too. Sniffed it out. Here's an Abbot of Carrow Keep. You'll get a trigger. Mantis Rider. Is there an untapped land?
Yeah, does he have the land to cast it? It's been exiled.
Looks like the answer is no.
No, he does not.
Soulfire Grandmaster's the follow-up.
Looks like he was fishing for the land.
There's a Temple of Plenty. The top card here is Mana Confluence. I bet Boswell would leave that on top.
Always wants another Mana Confluence.
Always wants a Mana Confluence.
Now, of note, Dan did not hit his 5th land that turn, but he is holding a copy of End Hostilities in his hand.
Maybe a little setup here?
Yeah, he has Valor Stance, End Hostilities, and Mantis Rider.
Okay. The Warden's going to come across here for 4. The follow-up here for Andersen looks to be a Siege Rhino.
Well, it's either that or he's just activating Warden. Okay, it'll be Rhino.
A little drain, a little gain. Pass the turn back over to Geil. Geil's going to need that land there for End Hostilities. I think he might need to reset this board if he finds a land.
This is Abzan doing Abzan things. He's got Dan down to 7, and it hasn't even felt like that much damage has been getting in.
Yep. Mystic Monastery is land number 5, however, there's the battlefield tab, so End Hostilities is not an option right now.
He's got a Valor stance for the Siege Rhino. He'd prefer to not have to use it there.
Yep. Kind of a tough spot because I don't think he wants to deploy Mantis Rider. I think that's the post and hostilities threat. I think he wants to save the Valor stance as well as a removal spell after end hostilities. So, what can he do, I think, is a thought process to get Chris to maybe extend a little bit more and me not have to use a removal spell.
Yeah, it's really interesting. He declined a 2-for-1 trade last turn. He could have traded both his creatures for the Warden.
Maybe we see it this turn.
Wow, and he's legal for the Mantis Rider.
Wow, okay.
I did not expect that play.
He'll come across for 3 in the air.
This is pretty dangerous.
Andersen with a 4/4 Warden of the first tree and a 4/5 Siege Rhino. Kept Manic Influence on top of the deck.
Right, so Dan is threatening to, put a lot, to double block the Warden, it appears, with Mantis Rider and Soulfire Grandmaster. He would take 4 off the Siege Rhino. He could stance the Siege Rhino and then maybe just not cast End Hostilities.
Yeah, well, right now Dan's only got 1 mana available, so he's got no options as far as what he can do this turn, outside of blocking appropriately. And that assumes that there are appropriate blocks to make.
Yeah, well, I think that's the line he's on here. So, yeah, is that he keeps 2 of his guys alive, stances the Siege Rhino, and then End Hostilities is a failsafe for another time.
Sure. Well, let's see how he wants to block. Andersen doing, I think, the simple thing, which is I'm attacking with both of my creatures.
All right, so it's not going to be the Mantis Rider trading for Warden. He's going to attempt to trade both the small creatures to the Warden. Now, if there's a copy like Dramoka's Command, this is a disaster.
Yep.
But it looks like they'll just trade.
So it looks like Chris is going to lose his Warden here, yeah, because that's a 4/4. So there's the trade that you mentioned. Now Andersen with a Manic Influence. I think we're going to get a Death Dealer. We are. His last card in hand is a Sands Up Citadel. And pass the turn back. Geil will untap with those removal spells in hand. Picked up an island for the turn.
Yeah, Rakshasa Death Dealer, though, presents lethal.
Yep. A very problematic card.
There are not too many ways that Dan has to deal with it. He can Ojutize Command the card and then counter it on the way back down. But his other answers, things like Valorous Dance, End Hostilities, Magma Spray, he'd be lucky if any of those trades for a Death Dealer.
Oh, Bile-Blight was a fantastic draw here for Chris. See if he wants to
yeah,
cast it or not.
that should be lethal.
Yeah,
but he doesn't have to. You're right.
The question is, does he want to cast it or not? I mean, it's super easy mode because we can see Geil's hand and we can see that Bile-Blight would just make this game over. But I'm not surprised to see Chris attacking first.
Mm-hmm. Well, and even as the board stands, Dan would have to have a removal spell for the Rhino. He'll have to chump the Death Dealer. Chris may get to win without ever casting that Bile-Blight.
Mantis Rider are going to jump in front of the Death Dealer. Well, there's a pump.
And there's no good way for Dan to sequence this. Yeah, see, he can stance away the Rhino.
Oh, we're going to get a little cute, aren't we? Aha.
Chris could Bile-Blight his own Rhino.
Someone wants to Bile-Blight their own Rhino.
And if he does, it will not die. That's adorable.
Isn't this the most adorable thing you've ever seen? Make it into a 1/2. Valorous Dance is not going to get the job done on it now. And Mantis Rider loses in combat. And Chris is able to keep up regeneration mana for shots of Death Dealer.
So go back Dan down to 4. If he's going to win this, it probably will start with a Dig Through Time for the turn.
Yep. And hostilities in hand. The draw.
It's going to land.
Yeah, it doesn't look to be very helpful. There's some planes. Yeah,
here Chris remembers to regenerate. He does.
He did. That's going to do it. Chris Andersen's going to win this match here over Dan Geil. 2-1. Obs on aggro will take care of Jeskai aggro. And Chris kind of mimicking Andrew Boswell with the build and the deck here this weekend. Some minor changes with both players off to a great start. They're both 2-0.
Yeah, so Obs on aggro knew it was still one of the best decks, doing quite well in the hands of both Chris Andersen and Andrew Boswell.
Very, very nice start here for both these players. I think we're going to see both of these guys make a pretty deep run here this weekend.